Welcome to the Monadnock Youth Coalition's live series called Uncomfortable Topics with Teens.
I'm Deepu.
And I'm Bailey.
Today we are here with Demetria Kirby. We will be discussing sexting among teens. We want to take a moment and say that we will be touching upon some sensitive content. It may be triggering to some individuals.
Before we get started, we want you to know that we will be taking questions at the end of the episode. Feel free to put your questions in the chat as you think of them, and we will DM you with the answer after the episode. Would you like to introduce yourself to our audience, Demi?
Sure. So I'm Demi Kirby. I'm the Youth Services Manager for the City of Keene and an adult volunteer with the Monadnock Youth Coalition.
Awesome. So our first question for you today is, what is sexting?
So I just want to preface this conversation by saying that I'm not law enforcement, nor am I a lawyer, but I do work very closely with law enforcement, and I've worked with youth who have experienced these situations. So that's kind of the background that I bring into the topic. The term sexting was born out of kind of combining the two words sex and texting. So it's defined as sending or receiving sexually explicit or suggestive images, messages, or videos through smartphone or the internet. It also refers to sending messages that refer to sexual acts but do not actually contain an image as well.
So what are the potential legal consequences of sexting?
Sure. So there are a lot of laws in New Hampshire associated with youth underage individuals who are sending explicit text messages to one another. Some of those include felonious sexual assault, child pornography, indecent exposure and lewdness, child exploitation, obscene matters. So there are a lot of laws, and I certainly won't overwhelm you with the legal terminology, but what I think is important to note is that many of these laws are felony level. And if found guilty in extreme cases, it could require an individual to register on the sex offender registry. There are kind of 3 steps in the sexting process. All of which are illegal. So taking the photo is considered manufacturing, sending the photo is distributing, and then receiving and keeping the photo is possession, all of which are illegal if the individual in the photo is under 18. What should be stressed is that it does not matter if the 2 parties are in a consensual relationship or if the individual who took the photo of themselves was willing to do so. If the photo contains someone who is under 18, it is legal. Also, if you lend your phone or camera to someone else who then takes those photos, you could also be found guilty of aiding in a crime, even if you did not actively participate. These also include photoshopped images. So photoshopping someone who is under 18's face onto a sexually explicit image is considered child pornography under New Hampshire law. And I think it's also important to note that the statute of limitations for sexual crimes against children is up to 22 years, meaning that somebody could technically be tried for this 22 years after the event actually took place.
And what should someone do if their partner/significant other wants them to send an inappropriate photo or message?
Sure. So I think what's also important to note here is that once you hit send on that image, it's really no longer in your control. So what we're seeing a lot of is that an image is sent when 2 parties are in maybe a trusting, loving relationship, and then they break up, and the picture is then shown to people that it was never intended for. And even though it's illegal, there is a dramatic increase in those cases occurring, especially between the ages of 15 and 29. So definitely keep that in mind if somebody, ever solicits an image, regardless of what your relationship status with them may look like. I think first and foremost, your partner should never pressure you into doing anything you're not comfortable with. So make sure you're voicing with them that you're uncomfortable with the idea of sending any of these images. You could even educate them on the law because a lot of youth aren't aware. If they care about you, they'll respect your boundaries, certainly, but if they continue to kind of pressure you, then it may be time to seek the help of a trusted adult. So that could be a parent, a caregiver, a relative, school staff member, a youth group leader. MCVP is also a fantastic local resource, and they do a lot of work with youth around identifying unhealthy relationships. And actually, they were on a previous episode of Uncomfortable Topics with Teens, and I believe that video can be found on Monadnock Youth Coalition's social media and YouTube page.
What could a person do if a stranger contacts them via social media for inappropriate messages?
So first and foremost, do not engage with the individual. Again, grab a trusted adult, let them know right away, and they can reach out to local law enforcement and the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, who can then determine the next appropriate steps.
If a picture gets spread around, how would someone get help without getting themselves in trouble?
Sure. So local law enforcement does not want to pursue charges against a youth who is self-producing and not selling it online. However, if they find that they're repeatedly coming out and educating this youth and this family and they're still engaging in the risky behaviors, then they may have to resort to the more drastic measures. I would encourage any youth experiencing this to reach out and to report it. Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force has the resources to locate the image and get it removed. They're also very well connected with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and they can kind of facilitate a connection between them and the victim and their family so that they can provide the families some resources.
What organizations could you reach out to for help?
So in terms of resources for help, there are some resources available. I will be honest that many of them appear to be targeted towards adults working with youth on this topic. But online, there are some toolkits and some websites and educational resources that are written specifically for youth. Common Sense Media has a toolkit that really kind of walks you through the definition of sexting, the potential dangers, and then also provides some strategies for youth to kind of redirect the conversation if somebody is trying to engage them in any sort of solicitation. There is also an app called Sip It that does something very similar. So it provides youth with kind of strategies for redirecting kind of flirty messages back into a safer conversation topic if somebody's beginning to kind of approach that solicitation phase of the conversation. And lastly, I would really encourage youth to reach out to a trusted adult. These are really scary and uncomfortable situations and overwhelming, and it's never anything that they need to go through alone. And certainly reaching out to an adult is the first step sometimes in getting the appropriate help.
Thank you so much for answering our questions, Demi.
Please remember that if you have any other questions, you can put them in the chat and we will DM you with the answers after.
So that brings us to the end of today's live.
We want to give a big thank you to our guest, Demetria Kirby, for helping spread the knowledge to our audience.
Remember that we are always looking for more questions to ask our experts.
We have a link in our bio where you can submit an anonymous question that we will answer in one of our lives.
Remember to tune in to our next week where we will talk to Wendy Prescott.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.